Hello, I'm Nate Wallace, 32 years old, standing in the gravel parking lot of the Pine Ridge Lodge in rural Pennsylvania, holding my car keys like they might be my escape route. The October air bites through my jacket, carrying the scent of wood smoke and the sound of laughter echoing from inside the rustic building. Golden light spills from every window, and I can see silhouettes of people raising glasses, slapping backs, celebrating. My father's retirement party. The end of Sheriff Tom Wallace's legendary 30-year career, and I'm out here stalling like a teenager who forgot his homework. I don't blame them for not expecting much from me tonight. It's the role I've played for 7 years now. Nate Wallace, the disappointment. The son who couldn't hack it at the police academy, who walked away from the family tradition and disappeared into some vague civilian job that nobody talks about at dinner tables. To everyone inside that lodge, I'm the Wallace who gave up. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. But the truth is an entirely different beast, and tonight it's clawing at my chest harder than usual. Before I tell you what happens next, let me paint you the picture of what they see versus what I carry. Drop a comment if you've ever had to hide your success to protect the people you love. I grew up in the shadow of the Wallace name in this small Pennsylvania town where everyone knew Sheriff Tom Wallace, the man who cleaned up Main Street, who never backed down from a fight, who raised 3 kids to understand that service meant sacrifice. My younger sister Emma became an EMT. My older brother joined the state police before transferring to federal work. And me? I was supposed to be the crown jewel, the one who'd take over Dad's badge and keep the Wallace legacy alive. Instead, I became the family ghost. The lodge door swings open and Emma's voice cuts through the night. "Nate, there you are." She hurries toward me, her EMT uniform traded for a simple black dress, her smile bright enough to warm the October chill. "I was starting to think you'd chickened out." "Just getting some air," I say, pulling her into a hug. Emma's the only one who still calls, who still believes there's more to my story than the version everyone else accepted. "Come on," she says, linking her arm through mine. "Mayor Barron's about to give his speech, and you know how he gets when he has an audience." As we walk toward the lodge, I catch sight of something that makes my blood freeze. A black sedan with state government plates sits at the far end of the parking lot. My heart hammers against my ribs because I recognize that car. I know exactly who drives it. Commissioner Rachel Liu is here. The woman who knows the truth about Nate Wallace, that I'm not a failure or a dropout, but the chief of police in Millgate City, the youngest person ever to hold that position in a department I've spent 3 years rebuilding from the ground up. The woman who could destroy my carefully constructed cover with a single word. "Nate?" Emma's looking at me with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I force a smile and follow her inside, but my mind is racing. In my pocket, my phone buzzes with a text I'm afraid to check. The warmth of the lodge wraps around us, filled with the voices of people who think they know exactly who I am. If only they knew the truth. The lodge feels like a museum of my failures the moment we step inside. Pine walls are decorated with 30 years of Sheriff Tom Wallace memorabilia, commendations, photos of him with governors and police chiefs, newspaper clippings with headlines like "Sheriff Wallace breaks up drug ring" and "Local hero saves missing child." The crowd parts slightly as Emma and I move through, and I catch fragments of conversations that make my skin crawl. That's the Wallace boy who couldn't cut it. Shame, really. Tom had such high hopes. Heard he works in some office now, accounting or something. I keep my expression neutral, but inside I'm burning. If they only knew that last month I led a multi-agency task force that dismantled a human trafficking operation. If they knew that the office work they're dismissing involved coordinating with the FBI to take down a corrupt city council that had been bleeding Millgate dry for years. But I can't tell them. The nature of my work, the sensitive investigations, the death threats that come with cleaning up a department that was rotten to its core, all of it requires absolute discretion. My cover isn't just about protecting my ego. It's about protecting everyone in this room from becoming targets. My phone buzzes. A text from Detective Maria Ortega, my second-in-command. Heads up, Chief. Commissioner Liu's in attendance. Didn't know she'd be there. Thought you should know in case you want to maintain your cover story. Too late, I think, spotting Liu across the room, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. She hasn't seen me yet, but it's only a matter of time. Nate! My father's voice cuts through my anxiety like a blade. Sheriff Tom Wallace approaches, all 6'2" of weathered authority, his dress uniform pristine, his shoulders still military straight at 63. Behind him trails Mayor Clyde Barron, that political snake who's been kissing up to my father for decades. Dad. I extend my hand, but he barely shakes it. Mayor Barron, you remember my son Nate, Dad says, and I catch the slight emphasis on son, like he's apologizing for having to acknowledge me. Barron's smile is all teeth and no warmth. Of course. How's the civilian life treating you, Nate? Still doing that. What was it? Logistics work. Supply chain management. I lie smoothly, the same lie I've been telling for 3 years. Well, Barron chuckles, we can't all be heroes like your father here. Dad doesn't defend me. He never does. Instead, he claps Barron on the shoulder and says, let's get you that drink I promised. They walk away, leaving me standing there like I'm invisible. Emma squeezes my arm. Don't let them get to you, she whispers. But it's too late. The memory hits me like a punch to the gut. 7 years ago, I was 25 and fresh out of the police academy, ready to make my father proud. I'd scored highest in my class on every test, aced the physical requirements, and everyone said I was destined for greatness. Then I discovered that Officer Rick Dalton, one of the training supervisors, was taking bribes from local drug dealers to look the other way during certain arrests. I did what I thought was right. I reported it. The investigation dragged on for months. Dalton had friends, connections, people who owed him favors. When the smoke cleared, he got a slap on the wrist and a transfer to another county. I got labeled a snitch, a troublemaker, someone who didn't understand loyalty. My father called me into his office the day I decided to leave the academy. You don't air the department's dirty laundry in public, he said, his voice cold as winter. Real cops handle things internally. Real cops don't take bribes, I shot back. Real cops know when to keep their mouths shut for the greater good. That was the moment I realized my father and I had very different definitions of honor. Now, Uncle Henry, Dad's younger brother and a semi-retired beat cop, taps his glass with a fork, calling for attention. The crowd quiets, and Henry's weathered face breaks into a grin. Ladies and gentlemen, he announces, his voice carrying the easy authority of someone who spent 40 years dealing with drunks and domestics. I want to say a few words about my big brother Tom. The crowd applauds. Dad beams. Tom Wallace has always been the responsible one in our family, Henry continues, getting some chuckles. While I was chasing girls and barely passing my detective exam, Tom was already planning his career, already thinking about legacy. His eyes find me in the crowd. Speaking of legacy, we've got both Wallace boys here tonight. One's a legend and one's, well, he's off the radar these days. The crowd laughs. It's meant to be lighthearted, but it cuts deep. I force a smile and raise my beer bottle in acknowledgement, playing the good sport. Dad chuckles too, then adds his own commentary. Not everyone's cut out for this life, he says, loud enough for everyone to hear. Takes a special kind of person to wear the badge. The implication is clear. I'm not that special kind of person. Emma's face flushes with anger. She starts to move toward the microphone, probably to defend me, but I catch her arm. Don't, I whisper. It's not worth it. But inside I'm screaming. If they only knew what I've been through. The midnight raids in Millgate's worst neighborhoods. The time I talked a suicidal teenager off a bridge while gunfire echoed in the streets below. The corrupt officers I've fired. The drug dealers I've put away. The community trust I've rebuilt one case at a time. I turn toward the door, ready to leave before I say something I'll regret. That's when I hear a voice that stops me cold. Chief Wallace? I didn't expect to see you here. Commissioner Rachel Liu's voice carries across the lodge like a thunderclap. Every conversation stops. Every head turns. The silence is so complete, I can hear the logs crackling in the fireplace. Leo approaches with a professional smile, her state commissioner's badge glinting on her jacket lapel. She's a small woman, maybe 5'4", but she commands respect through sheer competence and an unshakable moral compass. I've watched her testify before Congress, seen her stare down corrupt politicians twice her size. "Commissioner," I manage, my voice barely steady. "I've been following your work in Millgate," she continues, apparently oblivious to the bomb she's just dropped. "That human trafficking case last month was textbook. Your department's turnaround has been remarkable." The silence stretches. I can feel every eye in the room boring into me. Mayor Barron's mouth hangs open. Emma's eyes are wide with shock. And my father looks like someone just told him the sun rises in the west. "I'm sorry." Dad steps forward, his voice tight with confusion. "Did you just call him Chief?" Liu glances between us, realization dawning on her face. "Oh, I thought you knew." She looks at me with apologetic eyes. "Your son is the chief of police in Millgate City. He's done exceptional work rebuilding that department." "Chief of police?" Barron sputters. "But he works in logistics." "No," I say quietly, my 3-year cover story crumbling around me like a house of cards. "I'm the chief of police in Millgate City, have been for 3 years. The explosion of whispers and gasps fills the lodge. I see shock, disbelief, and something that might be respect flickering across faces that have dismissed me for years. Dad stares at me like he's seeing a stranger. "What the hell is this, Nate?" "It's the truth, Dad." "Truth?" His voice rises. "You've been lying to us for 3 years." "I've been protecting you," I snap back. "Do you have any idea what it's like to rebuild a department from the ground up? The threats I get? The enemies I've made cleaning up that city?" Leo clears her throat diplomatically. "Perhaps I should." "No," I say, my decision made. "It's time they knew." I look around the room, at all these people who've spent years writing me off as a failure. I became chief of police in Millgate when I was 29 years old. Youngest person to ever hold that position. I've fired 14 corrupt officers, dismantled 3 major drug operations, and reduced violent crime by 37%. Last month, my department rescued 18 victims of human trafficking and arrested a city councilman who was taking kickbacks from organized crime. The silence is deafening. I didn't tell you because my work requires discretion, because the people I've put away have long memories and longer reach, because I needed to protect not just myself, but everyone I care about. Dad's face cycles through emotions, confusion, anger, something that might be pride. "I need air," I announce, and walk toward the door. The October night feels arctic compared to the suffocating heat of the lodge. I lean against my car, my breath forming white clouds in the darkness. Behind me, I can hear the muffled chaos of voices, people trying to process what they just learned. Emma bursts through the door, practically running to reach me. "Nate, my God, why didn't you tell me?" "I couldn't tell anyone," I say, suddenly feeling exhausted. The position came with conditions, deep cover, no family ties that could be exploited. "But you're the chief of police. That's incredible." I laugh, but there's no humor in it. Is it? Or is it just another way I've disappointed the family by not following the path Dad laid out? "Are you kidding me?" Emma's voice is fierce. "You've been out there saving lives while we all thought." She stops, shaking her head. "I'm angry, Nate. Not at you for keeping the secret, but at the rest of us for making you feel like you had to." The lodge door opens again, and my father emerges. His face is unreadable in the harsh glow of the parking lot floodlights. "Emma, give us a minute," he says quietly. She looks between us, then squeezes my shoulder. "Don't let him make you feel small, Nate. Not anymore." When she's gone, Dad and I stand there in the cold, 2 men who've spent years talking past each other instead of to each other. "Chief of police," he finally says. "Yeah." "At 29. "Yeah." He's quiet for a long moment, Why didn't you tell me?" I laugh bitterly. "When, Dad? Between your lectures about loyalty and keeping my mouth shut? Or maybe during one of those family dinners where you made it clear I was the disappointment who couldn't hack it in law enforcement?" "I never said." "You didn't have to say it. You showed me every day for 7 years." The silence stretches between us, filled with all the things we should have said to each other long ago. In the distance, I can see Commissioner Liu through the lodge windows, probably trying to smooth over the chaos she accidentally created. "I need to go," I say, fishing for my keys. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Nate, wait." I turn back, and for a moment I see something in my father's eyes I haven't seen since I was a kid. Uncertainty. "Is it true? What she said about the trafficking case?" "Yeah, Dad, it's true." Quote, he nods slowly, like he's processing information that doesn't fit with everything he thought he knew about his son. "We should talk," he says finally. "Should we? Because I'm not sure you're ready to hear who I really am." The lodge door opens again, spilling light and noise into the parking lot. This time it's Uncle Henry, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing a knowing smile. "Figured you boys might need these," he says, handing us each a cup. "It's going to be a long night." Uncle Henry retreats to the lodge, leaving Dad and me alone under the harsh floodlights. The coffee steams in our hands, but the warmth doesn't reach the chill that's settled between us. For the first time in 7 years, we're really looking at each other, not as the disappointment and the legend, but as 2 men who've been carrying around misconceptions like stones in our pockets. "You want to know why I didn't tell you?" I break the silence first, my voice steady despite the storm raging in my chest. "Because the last time I tried to do the right thing, you called me disloyal." Dad's jaw tightens. "Rick Dalton was a good cop who made a mistake. Rick Dalton was a corrupt cop who was taking money from drug dealers. I cut him off. And when I exposed him, you chose protecting the department's image over supporting your son. That's not." He stops, runs a hand through his graying hair. "That's not how I saw it." "No? Then how did you see it, Dad?" "Because from where I stood, you made it crystal clear that loyalty to bad cops was more important than doing what's right." The words hang in the air like gunshots. Dad stares at me, and I can see the wheels turning in his head, maybe re-examining that day from 7 years ago through a different lens. "You want to know what real police work looks like?" I continue. The floodgates open now. "Last year, I had to fire my own deputy chief because he was running protection for a prostitution ring. You know what that's like? Having to arrest someone you trusted, someone who had your back in dangerous situations, because they crossed a line you can't uncross?" Dad's expression shifts, something flickering behind his eyes. 2 months ago, I got a death threat slipped under my apartment door. A photo of me leaving the grocery store with crosshairs drawn over my face. You know why? Because I put away a city councilman who was embezzling money meant for the children's hospital. I take a step closer, my voice dropping to barely above a whisper. 3 weeks ago, I held a 16-year-old girl's hand while paramedics worked on her after we pulled her out of a human trafficking house. She'd been beaten so badly she could barely speak, but you know what she said to me? "Thank you for not giving up." That's what real police work looks like, Dad. Not protecting the department's reputation. Not keeping quiet when good men do bad things. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves. Dad sets his coffee cup down on the hood of a nearby car with shaking hands. "Jesus, Nate. I rebuilt that department from the ground up. When I took over, they had a 43% case clearance rate and a community that wouldn't even call 911 because they didn't trust us to show up. Now we're at 78% clearance, and last month a grandmother in the worst neighborhood in the city baked cookies for my officers because she said we gave her hope." The silence stretches between us. Dad looks older somehow, like he's aging in real time as he processes everything I've told him. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asks again, but this time his voice is different, quieter, almost vulnerable. "Because I was afraid you'd find a way to make it about you," I say honestly. "I was afraid you'd either try to take credit for teaching me everything I know, or you'd find fault with how I was doing things. I couldn't handle either one." Dad flinches like I've slapped him. "That's what you think of me?" "That's what you taught me to think of you." He turns away, staring out at the dark woods beyond the parking lot. When he speaks again, his voice is so quiet I almost miss it. "I was protecting you." "What?" "When you reported Dalton, I was trying to protect you." He turns back to face me, and there's pain in his eyes I've never seen before. "You don't know what it's like in a small department, Nate. Word gets around. You get labeled as someone who can't be trusted, someone who breaks the blue line. I was trying to save your career." I stare at him, feeling something shift in my chest. By telling me to keep my mouth shut about corruption? By trying to teach you to pick your battles, to work within the system instead of against it. And look how well that worked out, I say bitterly. I left anyway. "Yeah," Dad says, his voice heavy with regret. "You did." We stand there in the cold, two cops from different generations, finally starting to understand each other. "I'm proud of you," he says suddenly. The words hit me like a physical blow. In 32 years, I can count on one hand the number of times my father has said those words to me. "I'm proud of what you've accomplished, and I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to hide it." I don't trust myself to speak, so I just nod. "But I'm still your father," he continues, "and I'm pissed as hell that you've been carrying all this alone." Despite everything, I almost smile. Yeah, well, that's what we do, isn't it? Carry things alone? Dad looks at me for a long moment, then does something that surprises me. He laughs. Not a bitter laugh, but something that sounds almost like relief. "Jesus, Nate, you really are my son." Uncle Henry finds me sitting on a fallen log at the edge of the woods, about 100 yards from the lodge. The party sounds have dimmed to a distant murmur, and the stars are brilliant in the clear October sky. He approaches with a bottle of whiskey and 2 paper cups, his breath forming white clouds in the cold air. "Figured you might need something stronger than coffee," he says, settling beside me with a grunt. At 60, Henry's knees aren't what they used to be, but his eyes are as sharp as ever. "Thanks." I accept the cup of whiskey, feeling the burn warm my chest. "Hell of a night," Henry observes, pouring himself a generous measure. That's one way to put it. We sit in comfortable silence for a while, 2 cops who've seen enough of the world to appreciate the value of quiet moments. Finally, Henry speaks. "You know, your dad wasn't always the hard ass you think he is." I glance at him sideways. Could have fooled me. When Tom first joined the force, he was 22 years old and greener than grass. First week on the job, he let a domestic violence suspect talk him out of making an arrest. Said the guy seemed sorry, promised it wouldn't happen again. Henry takes a sip of whiskey, his eyes distant with memory. 2 days later, that same guy put his wife in the hospital. Tom blamed himself for months. Said if he'd been tougher, more decisive, she wouldn't have suffered. I feel something cold settle in my stomach. I never knew that. Course you didn't. Tom doesn't talk about his failures, only his victories. But that case changed him. Made him believe that being soft, showing mercy, being understanding, that those things were weaknesses that put innocent people at risk. Henry turns to look at me directly. "When you were born, Tom used to sit in that nursery for hours, just watching you sleep. He'd tell me about all the things he wanted to teach you, all the ways he was going to make sure you were stronger than he was at that age." Stronger, I repeat, the word tasting bitter. Problem is, Tom's definition of strength got all twisted up over the years. He started thinking that being hard was the same as being strong, that showing emotion was the same as showing weakness. So when I came to him about Dalton, he saw his 22-year-old self, Henry finishes, the kid who was too soft to make the hard choice. He was trying to save you from what he saw as his own mistake. I drain my cup, feeling the whiskey burn away some of the anger I've been carrying. That doesn't excuse what he said to me. No, it doesn't, Henry agrees, but it might explain it. We sit in silence again, the weight of 30 years of misunderstanding settling between us like snow. You want to know something else? Henry says eventually. Tom used to brag about you all the time. Before the academy, I mean. He'd tell anyone who'd listen about his boy Nate. How smart you were. How you could see through people's lies. How you had this sense of right and wrong that couldn't be shaken. Used to, I note. Still does, just differently. After tonight, I think he's starting to remember why he was so proud of you in the first place. Henry stands, his knees creaking. You didn't fail the family, Nate. The family failed you, but families can learn to do better. He hands me the bottle. Might want to finish this before you go back inside. Your dad's been pacing the lodge like a caged animal for the past hour. I think he's got more to say. When I finally return to the lodge, the party has shifted into a different gear. The formal speeches are over, but people are still clustered in small groups, conversations more animated than before. I can feel eyes following me as I move through the room, but the quality of attention has changed. Instead of pity or dismissal, there's something that might be respect. Commissioner Liu approaches as I reach the bar. Chief Wallace, I owe you an apology. I had no idea your family wasn't aware of your position. It's fine, Commissioner. Maybe it was time anyway. She studies me with those sharp eyes that have intimidated federal judges. You know, what you've accomplished in Millgate hasn't gone unnoticed at the state level. The governor himself has been asking about your methods. Before I can respond, she moves toward the microphone that Henry used earlier. The crowd gradually quiets as she taps it for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for just a moment. The lodge falls silent. I see my father near the back of the room, his expression unreadable. I know tonight is about celebrating Sheriff Tom Wallace's remarkable career, Liu begins, and rightfully so. Tom has been a pillar of law enforcement in this community for 3 decades. Murmurs of agreement ripple through the crowd. But I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to recognize another law enforcement officer here tonight. Someone whose work has had a profound impact on an entire city. My stomach clenches as I realize where this is heading. Chief Nate Wallace has accomplished something truly remarkable in Millgate. In 3 years, he's transformed one of Pennsylvania's most troubled police departments into a model of community policing. He's reduced violent crime by 37%, increased case clearance rates by 35%, and, most importantly, restored trust between law enforcement and the community. The silence in the room is complete now. I can see Mayor Barron's mouth hanging open, his political smile frozen in place. Last month, Chief Wallace's department successfully dismantled a human trafficking operation that had been exploiting vulnerable women and children for years. 18 victims were rescued, and a network of corruption reaching into city government was exposed and prosecuted. She pauses, looking directly at me. This is the kind of leadership our state needs, the kind of courage and integrity that makes our communities safer. The applause starts slowly, then builds. Emma is clapping enthusiastically, tears in her eyes. Uncle Henry grins and raises his beer bottle in a toast. Even Mayor Barron, after a moment of stunned silence, begins to clap. But it's my father's reaction that matters most. He's not clapping, he's just standing there staring at me with an expression I can't read. Commissioner Lowe concludes her remarks, and the crowd gradually returns to their conversations, but the energy in the room has shifted. People approach me throughout the evening. Former classmates, family friends, officers I haven't spoken to in years, all wanting to congratulate me, to ask questions about my work. Mayor Barron, ever the politician, slides up with his practiced smile. Chief Wallace, he says, extending his hand, I had no idea. Truly remarkable work you're doing. I shake his hand, remembering how he'd mocked my disgraceful resignation just hours earlier. Thank you, Mayor. We should talk about some regional cooperation initiatives, he continues, already calculating the political advantage of being associated with my success. I'll have my office call yours, I say non-committally. As the evening winds down, I find myself standing near the lodge's stone fireplace. watching the dying embers. The warmth feels good after the cold confrontation outside. Nate! I turn to find my father approaching, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He offers me one, and I accept it gratefully. Hell of a speech, he says. Commissioner Lou doesn't do anything halfway. No, I suppose she doesn't. He's quiet for a moment then. 37% reduction in violent crime. 37.4, actually. And you did that in 3 years. It wasn't just me. I had a good team, still do. Dad nods slowly. Must be nice, having people who trust you to lead them. There's something in his voice, not quite jealousy, but maybe a kind of wistful respect. They didn't trust me at first, I say honestly. I had to earn it. Every day, every decision, every time I chose doing the right thing over doing the easy thing. Like with Rick Dalton. We stand there watching the fire, 2 cops, separated by a generation, but maybe, finally, starting to understand each other. The lodge is nearly empty by the time Dad and I end up in the kitchen. Emma went home an hour ago, Uncle Henry is helping the catering staff clean up, and most of the guests have filtered out into the cold October night. Dad sits at the small table near the window, still in his dress uniform but with his tie loosened, looking older and more vulnerable than I've ever seen him. I pour myself a cup of coffee from the pot, someone left warming, and lean against the counter, suddenly feeling the exhaustion of the evening settling into my bones. You know what the hardest part was? I say, breaking the silence. Dad looks up from his own coffee cup. What? Not being able to call you when things got bad. When I was facing down a room full of corrupt cops who wanted me gone, when I was getting death threats, when I had to make decisions that kept me awake at night, all I wanted was to call my dad and ask for advice. Something breaks in Dad's expression. Jesus, Nate. But I couldn't, because I was so afraid you'd tell me I was handling things wrong, or that I should have kept my mouth shut, or that I wasn't tough enough for the job. Dad sets his cup down with shaking hands. I never meant I was trying to protect you. I know that now. Uncle Henry helped me understand. Henry always was smarter than me when it came to people. Dad's smile is sad. Your mother used to say the same thing. The mention of Mom, who died when I was 15, hangs in the air between us. She'd always been the one who could bridge the gap between Dad's rigid expectations and my stubborn idealism. She would have been proud of you, Dad says quietly. What you've accomplished, the man you've become. She always said you had more compassion than the rest of us put together. She would have been proud of both of us, I correct. You raised 3 kids who chose to serve others. That's not nothing, Dad. Dad reaches into his pocket and pulls out something that makes my breath catch. His sheriff's badge, the one he's worn for 30 years, polished to a mirror shine. I want you to have this, he says, sliding it across the table. I stare at the badge, feeling the weight of everything it represents. Dad, I can't. Yes, you can. You've earned it more than I ever did. His voice is thick with emotion. I wore this badge for 30 years, but I'm not sure I ever carried it the way you carry yours. With real honor. With real courage. I reach out and touch the badge with one finger, feeling the cool metal and the deeper weight of my father's respect. I spent so many years trying to prove I was strong enough to fill your shoes, I say. Turns out I was supposed to walk my own path. Yeah, Dad says, his voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, you were. I pick up the badge, feeling its weight in my palm. Thank you. Thank you, son, for becoming the kind of man I always hoped to raise, even when I was too proud to see it. We sit in the quiet kitchen, the lodge settling around us with creaks and sighs. Outside, the October wind rattles the windows, but inside there's a warmth that has nothing to do with the dying fire in the main room. So what happens now? Dad asks. Now I go back to Millgate and keep doing the job. But maybe, I hesitate, then push forward. Maybe we can try to be father and son again. Really try this time. Dad's smile is the first genuine one I've seen from him all evening. I'd like that, Nate. I'd like that very much. 3 weeks later, I'm standing in the briefing room of the Millgate Police Department, watching my officers file in for the morning shift meeting. Sunlight streams through the tall windows, illuminating the faces of men and women who've become more than just colleagues. They're the team I rebuilt this department with, one case at a time, one decision at a time. Detective Maria Ortega slides into her usual seat in the front row, a steaming cup of coffee in her hands and a smirk on her face. "So, Chief, how does it feel to be a famous law enforcement officer now?" The room chuckles. Word about Commissioner Liu's impromptu speech has made its way through the law enforcement grapevine, as these things always do. "Same as it felt before," I say, taking my place at the front of the room. "Like we've got work to do." "Come on, boss," pipes up Officer Rodriguez from the back. "You've got to admit it was pretty badass, finally getting to tell your family the truth about your secret identity." More laughter ripples through the room. These are good people, dedicated cops who've helped me transform this department from a laughingstock into something the community can be proud of. They've earned the right to tease their chief. "What's badass," I say, opening the case folder on the podium, "is that we've reduced property crime by another 8% this quarter. What's badass is that Officer Chen here talked a domestic violence victim into pressing charges yesterday, probably saving her life. What's badass is that Detective Thompson closed 3 cold cases last month." The room settles into professional focus as we review the overnight reports, discuss ongoing investigations, and plan community outreach initiatives. This is what I love about the job. Not the titles or the recognition, but the daily work of making people safer, of building trust between law enforcement and the community we serve. After the briefing, I retreat to my office to tackle the mountain of paperwork that never seems to shrink. On my desk, next to the usual stack of reports and budget requests, sits a framed photo that wasn't there yesterday, the Wallace family, taken at the lodge after Dad's retirement party. Emma must have sent it over. In the photo, Dad and I are standing side by side, both in uniform. His dress blues, my simple chief's shirt. For the first time in years, we both look relaxed, genuine, like father and son instead of strangers sharing a last name. My phone buzzes with a text from Emma. "Dad went fishing with some kids from the youth center yesterday. Thought you should know he's adjusting well to retirement. Also, he asked for your number. Is it okay if I give it to him?" I type back quickly, "Of course. And Em, thanks for not giving up on us." Another text, this one from an unknown number. "Son, it's your old man. Emma gave me your number. Hope that's okay. Wanted you to know I've been thinking about what you said. About choosing the right thing over the easy thing. Made me reconsider some of my old decisions. Proud of you. Love, Dad." I stare at the message for a long moment, feeling something warm and solid settle in my chest. It's the first time my father has said he loves me in a text message. Hell, it's the first time he's texted me at all. A knock on my door interrupts my thoughts. "Come in." Officer Martinez pokes her head in. "Chief, we've got a situation developing downtown. Community center called about a group of teenagers causing trouble. Sounds like it might need your personal touch." I stand, straightening my uniform shirt. "What kind of trouble?" "The good kind, sir. They're trying to start a neighborhood watch program and need someone to help them organize it properly." I smile, grabbing my keys and badge. Now that's the kind of trouble I like to see. As I walk through the station toward the exit, I pass the community bulletin board, where someone has posted a new flyer, Chief Wallace Community Safety Initiative, Building Trust, One Neighborhood at a Time. 3 months ago, seeing my name and photo on something like that would have given me anxiety, worried about maintaining my cover. Now it just feels right. I push through the station's front doors into the bright Pennsylvania morning. The air is crisp with the promise of winter, but the sun is warm on my face. In the distance, I can see the skyline of downtown Millgate, a city that's been transformed over the past 3 years from a symbol of urban decay into a place where families can build futures. My radio crackles with routine calls, a fender bender on 5th Street, a wellness check on an elderly resident, a report of suspicious activity that turns out to be teenagers playing basketball in an alley. Normal things. Safe things. The kind of boring police work that means a community is healing. I climb into my patrol car and start the engine, thinking about the conversation I'm going to have with those teenagers at the community center. I'll tell them what I've learned over the past few years, that real strength isn't about being the toughest person in the room. It's about having the courage to do the right thing even when no one is watching. That true leadership isn't about commanding respect through fear. It's about earning trust through consistent action. Most importantly, I'll tell them that everyone deserves to be seen for who they really are, not just who people assume them to be. As I pull out of the station parking lot, my phone buzzes one more time. Another text from Dad. "By the way, son, I'm proud of you. Always have been, even when I was too stubborn to say it." I set the phone aside and drive toward downtown, toward the community center and the teenagers who want to make their neighborhood safer. The burden I've carried for 7 years, the weight of being unseen, unrecognized, misunderstood, has finally lifted. I'm still Chief Nate Wallace of the Millgate Police Department. I'm still the youngest person to hold this position, still the guy who rebuilt a department from the ground up. But now I'm also something I'd forgotten how to be. I'm Tom Wallace's son, and he's proud of me. The radio crackles again. Another call, another chance to serve. I reach for the microphone, ready to respond. "This is Chief Wallace. I'm on my way." Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.